I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is January 18th at 9:30, and this is our regular meeting of the Ottawa City Commission. And I'll sit in until our mayor arrives. So I would like to welcome everyone this morning, those that are in the room with us and those that are watching or listening on any of the media activities that we have. So we will begin the meeting this morning with the Pledge of Allegiance, and that will be followed by the invocation by our pastor, Pastor Larry Carrier of the Ottawa Bible Church.
Mayor Pro Tem Reed.
Yes.
Would you like to do roll call?
Yes, okay. Let's do roll call first. Come running in the door and find out I had to run the meeting. I'm a little frazzled. So.
Mayor Kaler. Mayor Pro Tem Reed.
Present.
Commissioner Graves. Commissioner Jorgensen.
Present.
Commissioner Skidmore.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum, and our mayor has just walked in as well. So when she gets up here, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation, please.
Let's start.
Won't even give you time to sit down.
That's all right. Good.
And there is a note made for item 11.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Shall we pray? Our Father, we are in your presence. We thank you that you're God who knows each of us and cares. We pray on behalf of our nation. Somehow you will bring peace and unity again. We pray for these whom you have led to be the leaders of our city and all of the other folks here to share their hearts and thoughts. We just commit ourselves to you and thank you that you're God who has loved us with an everlasting love. We pray for your wisdom and help today. We pray in our Savior's name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Pastor Carrier. We appreciate it. Next, that moves us on to the consent agenda, which includes minutes from the January 4th, 2017 regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam Mayor,
Commissioner.
I would move to approve today's agenda and the minutes from the January 4th regular meeting.
Madam Mayor,
Commissioner?
I move to amend the motion to move the city manager's contract up to item 10.
Okay. Would that be the appropriate way to? Okay. All right. Then, is there any discussion? There's been a motion and a second. Seeing none.
Did Mike second it? I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
Would
you like to?
Friendly amendment?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay. Would you like to second that amendment? No pressure.
Oh, I'm feeling fine about this. Second, yes.
Good. Great. All right. There's been a motion and a second regarding the consent agenda, which has been amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, that moves us on to public comments. Do we have anyone who has registered to speak on public comments?
None today.
Okay. Public comments is always a time in our agenda that is open up to any person who would like to address the City Commission. We certainly invite you to come to our meeting if you'd like to address us, and we would be happy and excited to hear from you. Next, that moves us on to declaration. At this time, I'd like to give commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication they might have that might have influenced their ability to consider today's issues impartially. Commissioners? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Next, under new business.
Approval of city manager employment agreement.
I believe that our legal counsel, Mr. Finch, will be addressing this matter.
Madam Mayor and Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to come before you this morning. This is the result of the annual evaluation that you perform on the one city employee that reports directly to you, your city manager. You recall that in the course of your evaluation, you had a discussion with the city manager about his desires concerning his contract and also provided feedback to him on the year in review and goals going forward. Again, I think the consensus of the commission was that you were very fortunate to have a city manager of Richard's caliber, someone who's not only committed to the organization but to the greater community that the city serves. There's a commitment to the citizens and to ensuring that they have good interactions and positive interactions with the city. Richard also has evidenced a commitment to other community organizations and has served as a mentor to others in the community who are in leadership roles and those who want to attain leadership roles. Based on that, you asked me to draft a contract that contains a one-year extension from the current term, which would extend the term of the contract through October of 2019. So essentially 2.5 years from now. There is no change in base compensation. There is a slight change in deferred compensation and a slight change in the car allowance in this contract. And that's indicative of the city manager's request, quite frankly, that base compensation not be affected in the agreement, but he did want the additional term to be extended for another year so that you all can continue to work together and move the city forward. Otherwise, this is a redraft of the agreement. You'll recall that there was the initial agreement when the city manager came to town and then a series of extensions for 1 year, and I just felt it best that at this point, about 9 years on, we have a redrafting of the contract to put everything in one place, and we can certainly do extensions from here if those are warranted in the future, but at least you have everything in one document and we're not chasing 7 or 8 different documents to piece the whole thing together. So that's the document you have before you today. It reflects the consensus, I believe, that the commission reached, and it's now ripe for you all to discuss and vote today, and I'll stand for any questions.
Commissioners, do you have questions for Mr. Finch?
Madam Mayor,
Commissioner.
I move to adopt the employment agreement as presented by city councilors.
I'll second it.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the employment agreement of our Ottawa city manager. Any discussion among commissioners?
I will just note that Kansas City Royals renewed Duffy's contract for 2 years. Same term as Mr. Neinstedt's, although a different amount, but same length of time. So that was very interesting.
I noted that
You're getting a bargain. Although I can't say that the city manager can throw a fastball as well as Danny Duffy.
Well, is he right or left-handed? I don't know, but I know.
No, but city managers can throw a curveball, so that'll be worth it.
I might want to note that we do, as our legal counsel had indicated, we do appreciate the service of our city manager, and that we feel blessed to have him at the helm here at the City of Ottawa, and feel like he has taken great strides to moving our community forward. So thank you, Mr. Neinsted. We appreciate it. Any other discussion? If not, we will proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Mayor Kaler?
And I gladly vote yes. Motion carries. That moves us on to the next item on the agenda.
Request for approval of ordinance granting a conditional use permit at 313 South Hickory Street.
This permit allows 2 dwelling units with an associated commercial use in a C4 Central Business District as requested by Green Space LLC. The Planning Commission has reviewed the permit request and approved the vote by 4-0. I believe Mrs. Lee will be discussing this concept with us today.
Good morning, Commissioners. Several years ago, probably about 2 years ago, we originally amended the zoning ordinance to allow for this type of a conditional use. Traditionally, in our C4 district, the residential was only on the second floor or not on the first floor. And that's true for a lot of communities, downtowns really, because the primary purpose is for retail and office type uses. However, the Planning Commission and the City Commission at that time determined that there were certain locations where it warranted a reconsideration and a conditional use opportunity. And so these applicants purchased a building that had a law office on the first floor and a residence on the second floor. But the structure is really not a typical structure in our downtown. It doesn't go property line to property line. It is maybe taking up at the most half of its lot with its building and then has parking behind it. And so these applicants asked for consideration for this to move from an office to a second residential unit. The original purpose for having those opportunities is to increase the housing density in our near to downtown or in our downtown, which increases additional activity, potentially more hours of the day. And when the Planning Commission looked at this use, there was no comments from the public, and they were supportive looking at the building and its location and the fact that it did have its ability to have its own parking and not affect the parking lot that's shared by all of the other properties downtown that the city owns. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions for Mrs. Lee?
Mrs. Lee, I guess the parking for this unit would be just on the south side of the building?
I believe it's on the east side of the structure.
On the east side? That parking lot to the south?
To the rear?
Is
belong to somebody else?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I believe the county has that, or they did at one time, so.
Okay.
But this is the available parking, which it doesn't mean they couldn't park in that if they have some access to it, but
Okay.
the required parking that we looked at is to the east.
This particular location, by a visual inspection, appears to look like a house.
It does, actually, and I don't know its origin, may well have been, as there are houses. That was part of the consideration that the Planning Commission originally looked at, because there are still houses on Walnut and Hickory Street that are non-conforming if you don't allow any occupancy on the first floor. And that has caused some difficulty. In fact, I would probably submit that part of the reason we have vacant spaces in our C4 area is because those structures became non-conforming and folks were not then motivated to reinvest and keep them sound and up to speed, thinking that something would come along as a commercial opportunity. And some of those places along Cedar Walnut really may not lend themselves, at least not at this time, to retail traffic. They may still be good for a location downtown, but we don't see an awful lot of new construction down here. We'd sure like that, and there's some key locations where I think that would be appropriate, but there's some other locations where really the housing is the most appropriate thing.
Mrs. Lee, I know when I was on the Planning Commission, which seems like forever ago now, but we looked at a lot of this type of mixed use, and I was excited then, thinking that it makes our downtown more of a livable, walkable community, close to the trails, close to the walking path and all that. So I think it's great to be able to mix those types of opportunities in there.
I should probably clarify too, for structures that abut Main Street, that at least part of that building would still need to be a retail or office use. This was really for the options for the entire first floor to be residential. So,
any other discussion among commissioners? If not, we will proceed to vote.
Madam Mayor, I'll make the motion that we do approve this item.
Boy, how about you make a motion? That would be great.
I will do that, and I do appreciate the buyer's investment in our community very much so I will make the motion we approve this.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded, as I had indicated earlier, that there's a conditional use permit to be issued for 313 South Hickory. Are there questions among the commissioners that we haven't already addressed, or any comments? All right, seeing none, we will proceed to vote for real this time.
How do you vote, Commissioner Jorgensen?
Abstain.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Mayor Kaler?
And I vote yes. Motion carries. Next, that moves us on to, I believe, which would be number 12 on the agenda.
Request for approval of resolution of support for Prairie Fire Development Group's application for affordable housing tax credits.
This resolution is required by the state of Kansas for consideration to receive tax credits. Mrs. Lee will be approaching this matter today, but we also have Ms. Kelly Raby, who will be, or Mr. Kelly Raby. It's just not my day, Mr. Raby. Have you noticed that? I mean, it's just not. So it's not about you. I'm just having an off day. So, Mr. Raby, I'm excited to have you here. We're excited to hear from you after Mrs. Lee.
I probably should have clarified that myself. So, as you stated, the resolution is required for consideration for affordable tax credit projects. And Kelly Raby is one of the principals that we have been talking with about this, and another is Rudy Manus, who's not here with us today. But Rudy actually lives in the county, and so he's familiar with Ottawa. And Kelly's been down with him now a number of different times. And I've off and on looked at properties with Rudy now for probably 2 years. The city has been maintaining a list of potential locations for duplex or multifamily or even single family since the recession, so that if folks were looking to come to Ottawa, we would have a ready list of where are those potential developments, depending on the kind of thing they were interested in. And so Mr. Manus has looked at a number of those parcels over time. More recently has arrived at a parcel that the city owns that's zoned R3, which isn't really part of the consideration today. On the other hand, I don't want people to go away thinking that there's other things that have yet to happen. In this particular case, the property is already properly zoned for the type of development that's proposed. In addition to the resolution, the city would be providing a couple of other letters, one of which is indicating that the zoning is already compliant and that we would need to do some platting. And then the other letter is that utilities are adjacent to the site. And so those are other things. And there's another letter I think we'll do at the end. Mr. Abbey's going to actually talk to you a little bit about the development proposal and the affordable tax credit, so I'll let him do that, and then we'll both be available for questions.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you, Wendy, Commissioner, Madam Mayor. My name, again, is Kelly Raby. I'm one of the principals and owners of a company called Prairie Fire Development Group. Rudy Maines, my partner, actually lives in the city over off East Rockwood, so has been in the community, I think, for the majority of his life or in this area. And we also own some farmland out south here towards Richmond. So very familiar with the area, shop a lot here on my way to, especially at Orchlands. Spent a lot of money there on food for our animals, but I'm going to give you a quick overview of our company, what we do, and talk a little bit about the tax credits and the project specifically. Prairie Fire Development Group is really a vertically integrated company. We do construction, development, and property management. And I think that's important to understand that when we develop our projects and invest in them, we're the long-term management company to protect that asset and make sure it's a protected and a good addition to the communities we're in. We primarily focus on multifamily, senior, and historic renovation projects. We focus primarily on more the affordable housing side, and I'll talk a little bit about why that is here in a second. Again, our company's made up of folks with varying backgrounds, from accounting to urban planning to economic development, which has been my career, and community planning, those types of things. So when we come in and do projects, we really have a solid foundation understanding of what we do and how we're making impacts in the communities we're in. Currently, the majority of our projects are in the state of Kansas. We just closed, thank goodness, 3 o'clock on Friday last week on a project in Newton, Kansas, a $12 million multifamily duplex project that we're starting this week. And then actually we're doing a ribbon cutting on Friday in Mound Ridge on a similar project that Mound Ridge, Kansas, just up from Newton, on a similar project as well. So we're very active in the state of Kansas. We have a very good reputation with Kansas Housing Resources Corporation, and we consistently get tax credit awards every year because we do what we say we're going to do, and we have good relationships with the committees we're in. Housing tax credits, real quick, and this is kind of an interesting topic now, particularly as they're talking about tax reform. Housing tax credits are basically a federal tax credit that funds from the federal government down through state housing agencies. Kansas Housing Resources Corporation is the agency for the state of Kansas that gets that allocation of credits. And every year, the state of Kansas, they're allocated on a per capita basis. So if your state's bigger, you get more. If it's smaller, you get less. The state of Kansas gets approximately $6.5 million in tax credits a year, and those are 10-year tax credits. So essentially, they're getting $65 million a year in tax credits. And another common mistake some people times make is these tax credits are an IRS program. They're funded through Section 42 of the IRS Code. They're not a HUD program. People hear Section 8. Section 8 is a a program that HUD and public housing uses. Section 42, you look it up in the code. Hopefully it will stay there, which I think it will, because it has strong bipartisan support. Actually, more Republicans support it than Democrats right now with a tax extenders bill that's been introduced by Orrin Hatch in the Senate. So I think the tax credit's safe because, again, what it is primarily is an incentive to the private sector to go out and build affordable housing in communities, which has been a successful program for the last 30 years, since the last tax reform in '86. The credits were going after are very competitive in the state of Kansas. They'll typically get 52, 53 applications, and the state will fund. And I know the cities has a few tax credit projects here, so some of you may have been through this before. But they'll award maybe 15, 16. So it's about a 4-to-1 ask. Our company has consistently in the last 5 years been ranked in the top 3 applications, so we consistently get an award. We know how to handicap our projects, and I think it really comes down with the cities we work with. If a city really wants and understands that they need more workforce housing, affordable housing, and gets behind it, that's what the state likes to see. As we're here to talk about the project, I think it's been very rare we've been in a community where they say we don't want more affordable housing, but again, if they say that, well, this isn't something we want, then we respectfully move on, because there's plenty of cities around the state that are dying for this type of project. And finally, the tax credits are sold to investors. This is kind of an interesting dynamic we're in right now. S Corps, which are basically like the big Wells Fargos, the big insurance companies, Pacific Life, Bank of America, they're the ones who buy these tax credits, and they use these tax credits against their income tax liability. The pricing is an all-time high, or was, or maybe is, because nobody really knows what corporate tax rates are going to look like in the next 12 to 24 months. If they go down, the pricing of credits will go down. But again, at a historically high rate, we're still, I think, in pretty good shape. And despite what happens with tax reform through various lobbyists that are up in D.C. right now, the program's fairly safe. And in fact, it might be accelerated because, again, this is part of the I think, commitment by some to say the private sector has more efficiencies in bringing this type of housing to the market and managing it long term. And that kind of goes over the resident criteria. A lot of questions we get sometime as well, who can live here, what kind of people, that type of thing. And we just kind of go through the basic criteria. In this case, we're probably going to do, given the size of the land, do it 2 phases. Phase 1 would be affordable, and phase 2 probably a moderate income housing type program down the road. Unfortunately, that deadline's in August, so we're kind of, if we can get the land purchased, we can do that. But income restricted market rate tenants are treated exactly the same. There's no, if somebody comes and wants to live in one of our properties, even if it's affordable, they have to prove, it's a very lengthy process on proving the income source that they have to qualify. If we do kind of a multiplier effect that says you have to earn at least 2.5 to 3 times of what the rent is to be able to live here, unfortunately, we have to turn some folks away. If they're only making $800 a month, it doesn't do us any good to move somebody in that's going to be paying $600 a month. So there's other programs out there that take care of that. So in this case, they go through a very in-depth income qualification process to make sure that they do have a source of income, like getting letters from employers, check stubs, Social Security letters, those types of things. They also must pass credit criminal background checks. Credit checks we have a little flexibility on, and that's kind of our call. Somebody has there's a lot of folks that may have had some issues during the downtime. That's our call, but we monitor that and make sure that they pay their rent on time. And if not, we have a very stringent policy. If they're behind on rent, it's basically pay your rent by the 1st, you're late on the 5th, by the 7th, eviction starts. So it's very strenuous, or a very organized process on making sure folks keep up with the rent. Criminal background checks as well. If a resident violates community policy, they will be evicted. That's something that, again, the average occupancy of all our properties is hovering around 98%. In McPherson, we're 100% with a waiting list. Up in Kansas City, Kansas, we're 100% with 350 people on it. So there's plenty of people, good people, that want to live in these communities. In McPherson, when we just came online last year, we had 3 or 4 trouble tenants. We evicted them right away, and we backfilled them in because we just can't tolerate. I'd rather have an empty unit sitting there versus having somebody in there that's causing damage to our unit, causing problems for our neighbors, and that type of thing. So And again, by us having our own management company, we are on the ground, and we can monitor that. And again, just by Rudy living here in town, I'm sure that he would be over here mowing the grass probably in the summers, making sure it's being taken care of. So, and then the tenant's required to requalify on an annual basis. I think another thing that we need to talk about on the credits, because the credits come through Kansas Housing Resources Corporation and they're invested in by these investors, every year we have a physical inspection report, and typically you'll have your investor, whether it's a Boston Capital or Raymond James, they'll fly in to walk the property. KHRC walks the property, check our files. So we have 3 sets of eyes reviewing the asset every year to make sure it's being maintained, and they're very stringent. I mean, they go around and look at sidewalks, they look at siding, they look at interiors of units, and they ding us and say, okay, these things are deficient, get them fixed, and then we'll take the deficiency off. So I think that's another kind of security blanket for this type of product where in a market rate deal you don't have that kind of asset review. I mean, it's just up to kind of the free market and the owner to, take care of his property. Another thing that, I just threw this slide in. I'm not going to go through it detail by detail, but just the economic and fiscal impact. And in fact, hopefully our website will be up someday here soon, but there's a whole page on it that really talks about all economic fiscal impact on affordable housing, what affordable housing is, what it isn't. And again, and the next slide will show, in all the communities we're building in right now, I think there's been such a focus on single-family home ownership for the last 20 and 30 years. There's been an overlook on the rental housing products. So that's what we're seeing in McPherson, Mountain Ridge, Newton, Hutch, that just not a lot of new multifamily quality rental products been built. And it's usually in the top 3 issues facing local businesses and industries for expansion. And again, just my friend who runs the Olathe EDC up in Olathe basically gave me a statistic, and you may know about this, basically from Olathe down to Ottawa, that whole corridor with all the warehousing coming in, there's going to be about, I think he said, a need for 17,000 employees over the next 20 years. So just this whole commuting corridor, I think, is positioning what the city's doing here with your economic development priorities, I think, is going to create a whole nother corridor of growth. And all these folks aren't making $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 a year. You need that workforce housing so people can move in your community. And I think the other important thing is to realize is when we're targeting 30 to 35% of income for housing versus the average right now in Kansas, I think, is 50% or more of income towards housing. Think about if somebody's paying 30% of their income towards housing, they got 20% extra money in their pocket they can spend in the local community on goods and services, healthcare, education, those types of things. Trends in rental housing. These are 2 statistics I always put up there. There's a lot more on our website that's coming if you're really interested in this. But essentially, what statistics I like to talk about is since 1960, rents on average have appreciated 64%. Renter incomes have only appreciated 18%. So when you have the graph of rents going like this and renter incomes going like this, there's a big disparity. And I think the second thing I like to quote a lot is one, and this pie chart on the right, this is 49%, that big purple half a pie almost, 49% of all renters nationwide are in less than $35,000 a year. And this was a study done by, I think, the Brookings Institute along with the Harvard Joint Studies on Housing. And again, when you look at that statistic, that's average national. When you look in rural areas or urban areas, it's even worse. But, us being up in Kansas City, my market analyst is here today to look at the properties. I mean, when I see product being brought on in Kansas City at $2,000, $2,500, $3,000 a month rent, to me, when half of the renters in the nation earn less than $35,000 a year, I just do not see that as being long-term sustainable. And what you see is coastal investors and REITs investing in this product. These guys that develop them, flip them out, they move on the next deal. They're not long-term owners. We're long-term owners. So when we go in and assess these projects, we want to make sure that the long-term viability of it's there based on a realistic rent profile. Because again, on the tax credit projects, and I mentioned this earlier, we have to own the property a minimum for 15 years, and probably we'll do an extended use for another 15 years because that gets us more points. So I'll be 85 years. Oh, God. I shouldn't even brought that up. I'm going to be an old man before I can do anything else with this property. So rest assured, with Rudy in the community and when we develop these projects, we are long-term owners. We're not absentee owners. We're in the community, and you'll see us on the property. And I guarantee, if this project happens, you'll see Rudy mowing the grass because he loves to mow grass. we will definitely be hands-on with the management and maintenance of the facility. Project overview right now is up on the corner of Cherry and Enterprise, up by the new school that was built. I'm sure you're all familiar with the site. Right now, we're proposing to do mainly duplexes. I think we have enough land where we can do duplexes versus triplexes. We're looking at a minimum of 30 doors of 2 and 3 bedroom units. Estimated development costs, I put 5.2, but it could range between 5.2 and 6, and that's another issue in the market right now. Construction costs continue to go up. I mean, what we're pricing today probably will go up another 15 to 20% by the time we start construction, so we try to build that contingency into our model. Amenities, we'll have on-site property manager, maintenance manager. In this case, we'll probably put some sort of small clubhouse, playground, extensive landscaping. And the thing about all these amenities, to understand how the tax credits work, all these construction costs are eligible basis for tax credits. So there's a breaking point, but we do get tax credit equity to help finance these projects in the state, and our investors really push us on having those amenity packages in our projects. And then again, as we've already talked, we'll be the actual management company, and we'll be on site daily making sure the property looks good and is being run well. Here's the type of product we're just about ready to build in Newton, and this is kind of what I think we'll do here. The bottom one's more of a, well, they're both triplexes, so I think what we're planning on doing in this and I just got my elevations yesterday, so I didn't have time to put them in the presentation. But what we're proposing to do duplexes, and they won't be 2 stories. They'll be single-story duplexes, 3 and 2 bedrooms, because we have enough land to kind of spread that out here, and it's cheaper to do it that versus going up. But as far as exterior treatments, that's a nice look that would probably, it may change a little bit, but I think out of all the projects we've done, this one looks really nice and has a nice layout, washer dryers in each unit, that type of thing. They're built energy efficient, Energy Star appliances, and a really high level of finish and amenities again with the project. So timeline, as Wendy said, our application's due in a couple weeks to the state of Kansas. Resolution of support's one thing, and then a couple other city letters to verify some things with our project, utilities to decide that type of thing. Application to KHRC on the 3rd, and actually I'm having lunch, and I always have lunch. I try to always have lunch with the guy that runs the program. So when I hand him my applications, I buy him lunch and kind of go through them and talk to him. We've already talked to him about Ottawa, and he likes the market. We're kind of waiting on our market study to verify the demand here, because I know there's a couple other tax credit projects, and on the multifamily side, we just need to verify what their occupancies are. But so basically May, they give us a notice of approval. Basically gives us a letter and say your project's been approved, here's your reservation letter, and immediately after that we shift to closing. We get our planning, development plan, everything is already zoned, which is great, so we can take that out of the equation. Then our goal would be to start construction September, October of next year, or actually this year. And then on this case, a 30 unit, if it's similar to Mountain Ridge and we have the same kind of weather, we basically got that built in about 12 months. So, and Rudy runs our construction company too, so we'll probably be down here swinging hammers trying to get our deadline done. But with that, that's my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or concerns you might have about our proposal.
Questions for Mr. Robbie?
What kind of rent can you command? I mean, like in Mountain Ridge and Newton, you think?
You know,
per unit?
Yeah, they're, I think they're like $445 on the low end to about $695 on the high end for our 3s, and I think that'd be similar here. And your rents are basically depend on the median income for the county,
right.
And the median income for the county here is pretty good, so I think it'd be very similar to what we're getting in Mountain Ridge.
So great. Well, I really like your project. How'd you hear about Ottawa, and tell us how you...
Yeah, well, Rudy lives here, and like I said, I have a farm down by Richmond, and I drive through here. In fact, we're heading back down there soon, so we come through the community a lot, and you know, I just, given my background, I kept on Rudy to get with the city, because it's like, really, this is your hometown, and it's, you know, it's positioned for growth, all the stuff they're doing with economic development. Wendy's been very helpful and responsive and stay in touch with us, and, you know, it's like, well, this is just down the road. Let's see if the city's supportive, and let's get going and bring a $6 million investment here. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Great.
I appreciate your, before you leave the mic, I appreciate your you're breaking down the difference between Section 42 and Section 8. I know that that's a question that I've been continually asked by citizens. What does this mean for our community? How does this look different than some of the multi-unit options that we have here in our community? And it appears that it does look different. I was impressed that you did call it workforce housing, because I do believe that we have a need for that here, and I think that probably former Mayor Skidmore can concur with that, with his housing initiative that he had moved forward with. I did also appreciate the fact that you highlighted that you would bring a playground to this particular area. That is a huge asset to our community. We are a Play City USA, and we look for having play available to all of our citizens, including those citizens that would be living in these particular units. And then also a clubhouse, which I hope would have some kind of meeting room. When I'm not mayor, I work for Girl Scouts, and we're oftentimes looking for places for troops to meet. And which, as you know, with Boy and Girl Scouts, we're helping to build leaders and build their leadership skills. And having that opportunity on site is so valuable. I can't tell you how important that is, to have that available to kids so that they can get those skills and be better citizens.
Absolutely.
So, Mr. Raby, I'm assuming, as I'm sitting there listening to you, these are school teachers also? These are school teachers that live here. These could be our policemen and others?
Sure. Yeah, actually, when we went to the city of Newton, I think the mayor and some of the commissioners were a little reluctant, but when we went in, and I'm just a data junkie, we actually pulled 500 occupations from the Bureau of Labor Statistics for the Wichita metropolitan area, and then we broke out the occupations that would qualify to live there, and it's everything from sheriff's deputies to, it basically kind of showed what the working, again, the program you have to have, Section 8 public housing, you may or may not have to have income, you have to have a job to live here, and I think that's a lot of.
I think if you could do that here and help us share that for you, that would be helpful. This is a good project, and this is what you have worked for, this community has worked for a long, long time. These are where our millennials are going to go. This is how we help our workforce grow in the community. Next week, you will probably see the contract for the first time. And one of the unique things in the contract is that, of course, contingent upon your approval, is that we take a certain portion of what they're paying us per acre and put that back into capital improvements on the side as part of our message that this is an important issue in the community and we're working to solve it. So I'm kind of excited about this.
Thank you.
Kelly, I appreciated seeing your elevations, or at least that you put in other areas. Do you anticipate basements, or with your clubhouse have?
That's the thing we always go back and forth on. Wyandotte County requires a safe room because they had that tornado like 20 years ago. Now it's a requirement. That adds typically about $5,000 to $6,000 per door, and it's just a function of. But we need to look into it. We're in Kansas. That's something we'll consider, and that always comes up as a question.
Right.
It's just a function of, it's $6,000, it's an extra $180,000 to $200,000. It's just a function of, but we also have to look at the safety side of it. So it's something we'll consider, and I think it's something we need to figure out moving forward, particularly if we're building in, we're in Nebraska, we're in that whole tornado zone.
Well, the manufactured home community that's next door to this, it does have a storm shelter, and I know that when that was put in. So, and I guess the Section 8 housing subsidizes the rent. This subsidizes the construction
Correct.
cost.
Yeah. So basically, it subsidizes the development cost, which allows us to push our rents down.
Okay.
Now we can accept Section 8 vouchers, but again, they have to go through the whole process. It's not project-based. They have to go through the process. And typically, because that question comes up a lot too, is how many Section 8 folks live. And I think Jim's already talked to that. He can't. There's just not that many vouchers. And whoever has a voucher right now is living somewhere for the most part. There's not a whole lot of transition in the voucher environment just because it's a lot of paperwork to move units. So, but for fair housing, if somebody came with a voucher, we
qualify when they get the bid. I mean, even like in McPherson, and I mean, we have maybe 1 out of 45, so, but they're held to the same standards as everybody else. So.
And during your construction phase, I assume you use local contractors as much as you can?
Yeah, you know, actually Advantage Electric here, we use him in all our projects. I think he needs to hire some more guys because he's going to be on our Newton project, so he needs to get, and I know Rudy's used, because Rudy's, handles our construction, he knows local concrete guys. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we like to do also. If we're getting this $6 million investment, how can we also use it as a catalyst for local economic development to the extent you have qualified subs here that can do it for the right price? And I'm sure Rudy knows them all. Let's get them in and let's hire them and keep that money in the local community. So that would be our commitment for sure.
That's excellent. Well, Madam Mayor, I'll make the motion that we go ahead and approve this project, and I really appreciate the fact that this can also serve as a catalyst maybe for other developments, since we haven't had a new development here for quite a few years. I don't know how long, but I will make the motion we approve this.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Skidmore and seconded by Commissioner Jorgensen. Is there any discussion among commissioners? I do want to highlight, and I know that this project, I'm sure, heard about the initiative that former Mayor Skidmore had put forth, and I do want to, tip my hat to him, because that was a huge priority to him, and so thank you for bringing that to the forefront, Commissioner Skidmore. We appreciate that. Is there anything else that needs to be? If not, we will proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Mayor Kaler?
And I vote yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
I just want to add for the public's benefit that today at noon is your interlocal meeting, and one of the things the development has also requested of the community is to consider either a rural housing incentive district, so you're going to hear more about that from our bond council, or a neighborhood revitalization amendment to put this area into that. And then the second thing I wanted to make sure we said to the broader community is that this development would add a roadway infrastructure that would lead to additional properties being developed in an alternative route for the elementary school traffic. Now, that won't happen overnight, not their development nor the continuation of the road, but again, it does things for the wider community too, and I just want to make sure they were aware of it.
Thank you, Mrs. Lee. We appreciate that highlight. Next, that moves us on to the next item on the agenda.
Request for approval of vacation request for property on West 7th Street.
The Board of Trustees of Calvary Baptist Church, Inc. have requested to vacate a portion of their existing utility easement on their lot north of 7th and east of Pine Street, 7th Street and east of Pine Street. The request has been reviewed by the Development Review Committee and the Utility Advisory Committee with no objections. Mrs. Lee, would you like to approach this matter?
Yes, Mayor. As we mentioned to you in your study session, this is a vacation of an easement just right behind the church. In addition to the easement that we're talking about vacating today, they have already granted an easement in exchange, more or less, so that they can relocate the sanitary sewer that's found in that easement, and then we would vacate this. In fact, we've already filed the newly dedicated easement that will give them the ability to go ahead and do the construction. But it was important to go through this process, so if there was a hiccup, they had not built a new sewer in a new location and unable for some reason to go forward with the planned expansion of the church to the north, which is their primary project. But they had to relocate the sewer and do this new easement. So we would submit that the easement should be vacated. The utility department has been all the way through the project with them as far as the design, and KDHE has already signed off, and everything's ready to go with just this last task.
Commissioners, are there questions for Mrs. Lee? If not, I will entertain a motion if there is one.
Madam Mayor,
Commissioner?
I move to approve the vacation request as presented.
I'll second it.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the vacation request on property on West 7th Street, owned by the Board of Trustees for Calvary Baptist Church, Inc. Is there any discussion among commissioners? If not, we will proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Mayor Kayler.
And I vote yes, motion carries. That moves us on to report by the city manager.
I have 4 things.
Okay.
So, John, what do you think? Between the 2 groups, we had 100, 150? 120.
Amazing.
So, last night was the second charrette. We had 2 of those, which were spearheaded by the Chamber of Commerce. And I think what's important about that, especially when you think about this housing proposal, is we have a lot of people working hard for this city, and things don't happen overnight. And I know how long Wendy has been working on this since we got the first indication that when she was contacted a couple of years ago about housing. And my point is this to our citizens and community is these things take time. These things take involvement. They don't happen overnight, and the best projects in a community are citizen-driven. That's where the real commitment to the community is. So I compliment John for putting that together. A lot of people were there. A lot of people helped. A lot of different ideas. Blake and I heard digital signs. We kind of got excited about that. But so I think as we go down this road, we're obviously not done with those charrettes. We're going to get a report back, and then we'll be talking about how we kind of take low-hanging fruit, because the important thing to do when you have citizen involvement is to show them that what they said you can turn into a success, and I know we'll do that. So, the ice storm, that wasn't. I know as I read social media, I see some people that were disappointed that all that didn't come about, and people made decisions with the best information they had, the schools, the county, the city, the hospitals. But I think here's another important point for everybody to remember and our citizens to remember. We were in a position where we were able to sit down and plan. You have great city staff, right? And we have good partners over at the county, and we have good partners over at the school district, and we have good partners at the hospital. We were kind of in contact with all of them, but we were ready for the ice if it came. And the important point of this to our community is that if we hadn't been ready, you better believe, and rightfully so, we would have been criticized. But the point is, we have competent people around the table that have this community, the best interest of this community in their heart. And Sarah was up at a couple of meetings at the emergency management. You have KDOT involved in that. You have all functions of the county, all functions of the city. So I compliment our people because they spent a lot of time. Mr. Summer worked from home doing some social media stuff for him. So the nice thing about technology age is you don't have to be sitting here physically to do some things.
Well, 2 degrees would have made a tremendous difference. So.
Well, it would have, and if you look at where it did go, I mean, just because we didn't have 2 degrees here, there was 2 degrees some other place. Oklahoma was getting pretty bad. Kansas Municipal Utilities, unless there is some objection, I'm going to be leaving a little bit early and going up to Topeka. KMU has their legislative day. We have some receptions planned, and Wendy has the noon meeting well in hand because you're going to focus on this issue of housing and the program that we need all the partners at the table for. And finally, but probably the most important thing is I want to say thank you to you and to this community. It is my honor to be this community's city manager, and we have such great people. And any success that I have is because of you and the great people in this community who are willing to go do things. And I know what I speak about because I've been in some communities that just don't have that energy, don't have that soul or that desire to move forward. So thank you for your work.
That moves us on to reports by the city commissioners. Commissioner Jorgensen.
I really don't have anything, but just to say my appreciation that Richard serves as the skipper of the ship we call Ottawa, and I think the community's in good hands.
Commissioner Reed.
I would agree with those sentiments as well, and I have no other report.
Commissioner Skidmore.
Ditto to that as well, and I might also mention congratulations to Chuck Bingham, retiring here from the city. I've done a great job bringing our IT department from point A to point B, and thank you for helping me load this thing up so I know how to work it, and for an amateur like me, I needed all the help I could get, so Chuck, thank you for your service.
Perfect. Those are all great comments. That moves us on to reports by the mayor. A few things that I do have on my list. The first one is to highlight Ottawa Reads, and we have a new book this year, and it is entitled Girl in Reverse by Barbara Stubler. It is available at the library. There are extra copies. There's no reason that there's not a copy for every single person to read. When I get done, someone's welcome to my copy. And so I would like to see you join us on February 28th at the Hasty Room at OU Union for an author event. Then there will be a special class, a portrait class for ages 11 through 18 on February 6th. And then there's an after-hour books discussion, which I think is so important for our young citizens, on the 11th, Saturday the 11th, from 1 to 3 with the author. Please step into the library and pick up a copy, and then pass it along to a friend or pass it along to someone else. You have just a little over a month to read it, which is plenty of time, and I invite you to join me when we talk about Girl in Reverse. Next, I want to highlight that yesterday the city manager and I were able to meet with the new chief of staff for Senator Moran for Kansas. It is an individual who has been the chief of staff of Senator Moran's office in D.C. for the last few years, so Alex is certainly not a stranger to us, but we welcome him back to Kansas, and we welcome his friendship with the city of Ottawa and good things that come from Senator Moran's office, and we appreciate that working together relationship. Also want to certainly thank the chamber, thank John and Cherry, John and Cherry, because I know Cherry did some stuff. I know, I'm like John and Cherry, but Sherry too, because I know Sherry was very highly involved with that, and Brandon, with all the events that happened with the charrette. I so appreciated the ideas that come out of that. I was sitting there last night trying to figure out how to get some of those individuals that are in the room that don't oftentimes come to these meetings. How can we mobilize those individuals? If you went to a charrette and you thought this is a great process, be a part of the process all the time. We'd like for you to be a part of the process more often. And if you missed it, I'm sure that you could reach out to the chamber, and they would gladly inform you on how that went. I know that there will be some additional, and I'm looking at John to make sure that I am correct here, but there will be some additional presentations that will happen as kind of a summary of those events. So we look forward to those. So thank you for hosting those. Again, Chuck Bingham. It's the best when he says my name. Chuck. You're the best. Thank you so much. And we appreciate all your service with the City of Ottawa. We are sorry to see you go, but I know that your wife has a whole list of honeydews for you, and it's growing by every single day. So lucky you, and lucky for your wife to have you around more often. So congratulations on your upcoming retirement. Lastly, I do want to point out that we have an important announcement that is coming up later in our month, and actually it's just next week, and so certainly hats off to our Ottawa Fire Department in their 150th year anniversary. We appreciate them being here every single year, but want to certainly highlight the 150th anniversary of them being in our community. We will have a reception and a pinning ceremony from 1 to 1:30 at the 2nd Street Fire Department location. Public is certainly invited. We would love for you to be a part of that. If you could not be a part of that anniversary celebration, please join me in thanking a firefighter for their service, for sending a note to the fire department, congratulating them on their 150th anniversary. We appreciate them being here, and happy birthday to you. So, yes, please. Chief Mathias would like to address.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. We're putting on the finishing touches over there at the fire station, and we had a pleasant surprise yesterday. Congresswoman Lynn Jenkins came down and presented us with a flag that was flown over the U.S. Capitol and a plaque congratulating us. And so she was able to put on some fire gear, and we have pictures. We might put that on our media outlets. And she rode with a truck, and so she was very, very thoughtful in what we do, and it was a very interesting and fun time with her. And I just want to tell her thank you and her staff to put that together. Also, I'm wearing a different uniform today. We've kind of spruced a few things up over there, and one of them is our uniform. So this will be the normal look for our line people. Of course, Assistant Chief Dillon and myself will be in whites, but I just thought I'd wear this today to show the public that we will have a different look out there. We had the light blue shirts, so we went to a dark blue. So just to make it a little crisper and something new for us. So
great.
We appreciate it. Thank you for letting me speak.
You look really nice in your new uniform.
Well, thank you. I hope it's the uniform. So.
Yes. That completes my comments for today. I do want to go on to announcements. We have a study session on the 23rd, which is next Monday at 4 p.m. If you cannot participate in person, you can always participate on Facebook through Facebook Live, or you can certainly participate in person, as I had indicated before. We love to have you there and a part of the process. We do have on the 25th a special call meeting for Local Government Day in Topeka, specifically at the Capitol. It will be that afternoon. It is important that we go up and meet with our legislative representatives. We are lucky to have Mr. Finch here on staff in a different manner, but nevertheless it is important that we would visit with all of our legislative members and let them know about things that are happening in our community. So we will do so on the 25th and really throughout the whole legislative session. We also have a study session on the 30th of January. The 1st of the 1st of February, we have a regular commission meeting at 7 p.m. and we have our special call city-county meeting for 10 to 12 at City Hall Commission Chambers on the 16th of February. Is there anything else that needs to be brought forward to the commission today? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Madam Mayor, I move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.